The views on a Breath of Fresh Air podcast reflects the parties involved, and we encourage you all to use it as a conversational tool that will lead to personal studies of your own.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Welcome to a Breath of Fresh Air podcast. Here with your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz Gay. As a young person, Christianity can be so foggy, like smoke in the mirrors and so unclear. But we're here to bring you a breath of fresh air.
We made it into the king's bedroom. The plan worked, brother. And now is our opportunity to change our lives forever. Just as we rehearsed. You stab him under the fifth rib, and I will take off his head. Go! Ah! We did it. We did it, brother. We beheaded the king. And now we will deliver the head of Ishbosheth to David, and he will make us great in his kingdom. All right, let's get out of here. My lord, behold, the head of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, thine enemy, the one who tried to take your life. The Lord has avenged you today, my king, from the hand of Saul and his descendants.
What have you guys done? You think I would be happy? As surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of every trouble. When someone told me Saul is dead and thought he was bringing me good news, I seized him and put him to death in Ziklag. That was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more when wicked men have killed an innocent man in his own house and in his own bed, should I not now demand his blood from your hand and rid the earth of you? Men, kill them. In this episode, we will be discussing 2 Samuel chapters 4 and 5. We are continuing the story of David and seeing the events that led up to him becoming ruler over all of Israel. As always, be blessed and enjoy. All right, welcome back to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. My name is Earl Roberts.
My name is Nakhaz Gate, and we are the Breath of Fresh Air.
It's still growing on me, folks. It's still growing on me. But hopefully everyone's had a great week. We definitely appreciate you guys for tuning in. This is episode 98. 98.
Ooh.
Man.
Oh, man.
God is great. God is great. Hopefully we really appreciate everyone who tunes in. Oh my. I'm going to save all the name call of episode 100. Because we're so close, might as well just save it for that. But definitely do appreciate everyone. Appreciate those who share it. Again, you can also be one of those who share it. Just share it with one person. Help us grow. Help us extend our reach by the grace of the Holy Spirit. And so this week we are picking back up with the story of David. But before that, man, so for weekly thought. So today I came across a series of like testimonies and stuff that I was listening to today, and it was pretty impactful. I know we've been talking a lot lately about being unapologetically Christian and not being afraid to tell others about what you're going through. And to me, today was just evidence of that. Just hearing other people just talk about their God experiences. Talk about, like, there was this one guy who said, "Man, I was selling all manner of drugs and I've gotten sentenced to jail." But he said it was so funny, like when the judge was sentencing him, like his mother already told him like what to say to kind of like let the judge let him go. But he said as soon as he's about to say it, it was like something came over his mouth. And you just heard a voice saying like, this is like, you go in here, you're not going to be alone, but I need you to go here. And he went in jail. That's so he actually found Christ in jail. And his whole experience was like, he was just in this jail cell room one night, just crying and like just saying like, God, like, where are you? He just had like, since he had a whole night just talking to God, like God was there talking to him, and now he's a pastor in some state. But listen to a few more different stories where people talk about their encounter with God, or where God has used them, or how God has blessed them. And it's just really impactful, man, because even if you're going through something or had a down moment, just hearing these stories of how good God is in general, it just uplifts you. It gives you that hope. It gives you that reassured faith that no matter what you're going through, God can bring you through. And man, I feel like some people saying like, oh, I need my like Damascus Road conversion. I'm never going to experience that. But here's the thing, God meets people where they're at, and you might never have drifted that far from God to have that type of experience, but you shouldn't let that deter you or let that cause you to lose faith, because God can use you, who knows, do some things even bigger, because he has given you a personal testimony that you can share. So you shouldn't be trying to compare your testimony to someone else, like, oh, God may have cured someone from cancer, so you feel like you're talking about God curing from the flu. You can't talk about it, but you should. Like, so.
But my thing is, you gotta be. This is the thing, bro. Sometimes we have Damascus Road experience, but we don't get converted.
Mercy.
We don't have a Damascus Road conversion.
Oh,
just to be completely honest with you, bro. I don't feel like anybody, especially people who are Christian, you can't say God ain't never brought you from something, or God ain't never do nothing for you. You understand? Mm-hmm. So what I like about Paul is that Paul was ripe for the work. Paul was ready. Paul just was miseducated. Paul felt that Judaism to the core was perfect and was what he was supposed to do. And God had to show him, bro, you zealous, bro. But for the wrong person, you need to be zealous for me. And God had to prove to him that he was real. Jesus had to prove to him that he was real. And once that happened, Paul was just as zealous, if not more, for Christianity. You understand?
It was over for Paul.
And so my thing is, God ain't just pulled Paul out of nowhere. Paul ain't never do nothing for God. And then God, he put him on the Damascus Road, and that make me this Christian on fire. I was already on fire for who I thought Yahweh was in the first place, you know? And so that's my thing. I know a lot of people have expectations based on what God has done for others, but you have to understand, like, your relationship with God and other people's relationship with God are going to be different. God met them at that way because of where they were at, or because of who they are, you know what I'm saying? And God has a way to do that for you. But if you are not interested in God, you might not even recognize God trying to reveal himself to you. Just to be completely honest, it's things I do in my life over the past year where I felt like I needed an answer from God for something, you know, and I felt like I didn't get an answer. And I did the most righteous thing I could do in this predicament. And I was rewarded afterwards, and I had clarity. It wasn't the fairy tale, oh, God told me to do this and that and the third. Like, even when I got my job at Advent Health, I was conflicted if I should cut my hair for the interview, you know. I was praying to God, let me know. And I couldn't see where it was a sin for me to have hair, you know. Mm-hmm. And I did feel like I would have been compromised. I felt like I would have been going against my personal convictions on me and my individuality if I had did that. And one of the managers there, I remember hearing a quote that he had said to someone else, is that, like, if somebody doesn't accept you for your, like, the things that are natural about you, like your race, your appearance, do you really want to work for them, for that place, you know? Chose not to cut my hair, and, you know, I was awarded the job, and I've had multiple roles there. And so I didn't get the answer that I needed, bro. Like, God ain't coming, give me a vision. Yeah, Nakhaz, do not cut your hair. You feel me? God gave me all of the tools I needed, and I walked in that. I didn't doubt. You know, I had faith that God could make a way for me. And then once that happened, I got the confirmation afterwards by getting the job, you know?
Man,
so
Go for it. No, finish your thought.
No. I'm done.
But I said the one thing that's powerful, and that reminded me of one of the things I heard today in one of the testimonies. I was saying that, man, when you're praying in the spirit too, like you got to realize like God uses people to deliver his message. In the Bible, we see God use multiple prophets to deliver his message. Like the people, I know you did a sermon on Nineveh recently, right? But the people in Nineveh didn't get God coming to talk to them.
Facts.
The Holy Spirit might have been working on them, but the people in Nineveh got Jonah, who was used by God to send God's message to come and talk to them, and they had to act on it. Like you was praying about the decision, God sent someone to say some words. You're like, these feel right. Like, okay, let me still walk in faith. Let me keep on doing what I got to do. In this particular instance, and you got the job. So I'm like, sometimes God be sending you signs and be sending you just, again, people confirming things for you, whatever you're going through. And you just gotta listen. Like some people really want, like to your point, they want that like big, yes, I know for a fact I saw an angel with a flaming sword. I'm just saying, like, I know I always say I want to see an angel, but after seeing how much people say being scared, I'm like, ooh, right. Maybe I might want to revisit this, but I still want to see an angel though. But yeah, man, like, go for it.
But even with Jonah, I feel like, I hope this isn't a reach, but I feel like Jonah is the perfect person to be the contrast to Paul in Damascus, because Jonah was supposed to have a Nineveh road experience where he get to watch God convert a bunch of sinners, and that should have changed his heart and softened his heart and allowed him to love his neighbor. Bro, consider what Paul was doing, bro. Paul was preaching to the Gentiles. Jonah did it first, bro. Before Paul, it was Jonah, you know? And I feel like that's why Jesus used to quote Jonah. Like Jesus mentioned Jonah a few times. And also there's the story of Jesus being asleep on the boat in the same way Jonah was asleep on the boat. And it really used to puzzle me. I'm just like, bro, Jonah was almost like Samson. We have a prophet who did not complete the mission. I mean, he did, you know what I'm saying? But he didn't enjoy it. In the same way Samson killed Philistines. That was his mission, but he wasn't doing it off his because of God. You know what I'm saying? It was circumstantial, right?
Exactly.
But we see Jesus multiple times mention Jonah. He said, no sign will be given to them except for the sign of Jonah. The Son of Man, just like how Jonah was in the whale for 3 days and 3 nights, so the Son of Man will be in the earth. I'm just like, Jesus, you mentioning Jonah, but I'm just like, man, Jonah ain't really, you feel me? Like he wasn't successful. But at the end of the day, you got to think about who Jonah was. Jonah wasn't preaching to Jews. Jonah was preaching to Gentiles. But I'm sure he did preach to Jews. They have one evidence of him preaching to King Jeroboam II.
Yeah.
Right. But Jonah was preaching to the Gentiles, and that was unheard of at the time. Jesus came to set everyone that was captive free. You feel me? Including the Gentiles. So that's a powerful parallel there. But Jonah was set on a big mission, but he complained all the way. He complained there and he complained afterwards. So Jonah missed it. But now if Jonah came there with a contrite heart and he saw the beauty in Gentiles being free, Jonah might have had a transformation within himself. He would have been able to let that hurt go. And that could have been the Nineveh road experience for him. But he missed out because of his attitude, you understand? Because of his perception, you know, because of, you know, the way he viewed the situation. I can't wait till the Jonah story, but we got off fun. That's a long time from here, but we got off fun.
I know. All right. So to get to the story, as a quick recap, last week, we focused on when David was king of Judah. Right after Saul, those died. The rest of the Israelite tribes did not accept him as king right off of the bat. He was king of Judah. Abner, who was Saul's chief of staff, commander of his army, put one of Saul's king, Ishbosheth, as king over the rest of Israel. And Joab, who is David's nephew, also kind of had a David's little army commando unit. They went to war over a stupid game, in my opinion, but the game was, let's see who can impale each other with swords. Then after that, Joab's brother pursued Abner. Abner told him, hey, stop. He didn't stop. Abner, stabbed him with the wooden part of his spear. He died. And then Abner, came to peace with David, was about to turn off all over the rest of the tribes to David. Joab thought it was a trick, and he also wanted revenge for his brother, so he killed Abner, and David was not happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a good recap. Definitely check out last week's episode because we go way, way, way more in depth than that. But, just to catch up the casual listener who just decided to pop into episode, whichever one this is, 98. So we're picking up in 2 Samuel chapter 4. When Ishbosheth, as we call him, Ishi, son of Saul, heard that Abner died in Hebron, he lost courage, and all Israel became alarmed. Now Saul's son had 2 men who were leading the raiding bands. One was named Baana, and the other Rechab. They were the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite from the tribe of Benjamin. Beerothite is also considered part of Benjamin because the people of Beeroth fled to Gittaim and resided there as foreigners to this day. That was a fun fact. Then in verse 4, Jonathan, son of Saul, who had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled, but she hurried to leave, and he fell and became disabled. His name was Mephibosheth. I tell you, boy, these Bosheths.
Mm-hmm. I was running in the family line of Saul.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know why.
Mephibosheth. Okay.
What does I should see what Mephibosheth means.
I got you.
I appreciate it. So now Rechab and Baana, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, set out for the house of Ishbosheth, and they arrived there in the heat of the day while he was taking his noonday rest. They went into the inner part of the house as if to get some wheat, and they stabbed him in the stomach. Then Rechab and his brother Baana slipped away. So while Ishbosheth was taking a nap in the middle of the day, just napping, the people who he thought were on his side came in while he was asleep, acting like they were going to get some wheat. I mean, to me, I'm like, why does that part really matter if he was already sleeping? But either way, they stabbed him in his stomach, and that's one way to be woken up.
Oh boy, he woke up dead.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mephibosheth means from the mouth of shame. So he seems illegitimate. I don't know if the Bible mentioned that. I might have missed that just now, but seems illegitimate. Or maybe, I don't know.
Because what
Ishbosheth means man of Baal.
Interesting. I thought the Ishbosheth would have been shame.
Right. I don't know. The transliteration, I don't know how they get that. But his name was originally Ishbaal, meaning man of Baal. So that's why.
Okay.
Hebrew editors later substitute Bosheth, meaning shame. Okay. So sorry guys, this is from Britannica.com, so I didn't really fact check it deep enough. So like you say, the suffix Bosheth probably means shame. So man of shame, probably, and from the mouth of shame.
Interesting. Okay, so now we know.
Yep.
So in verse 7, they had gone into the house while he was laying on his bed in his bedroom. After they stopped and killed him, they cut off his head, taking it with them. They traveled all night by way of Arba. They brought the head of Ishbosheth to David at Hebron and said to the king, "Here's the head of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, your enemy, who tried to kill you. This day the Lord has avenged my lord the king against Saul and his offspring." David answered Rechab and his brother Baana, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, "As surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of every trouble, when someone told me Saul is dead, and they thought he was bringing me good news, I seized him and put him to death in Ziklag. That was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more, when wicked men have killed an innocent man in his own house and his own bed, should I not now demand his blood from your hand and rid the earth of you?"
Imagine the king telling you, bro, rid the earth of you, bro. Like, it's like he's saying, I'll do the earth a favor by taking you out, bro.
I'm mad. It's like news used to travel fast, but some news used to travel slow. Because I'm like, how y'all ain't hear his story? They probably thought since he was an Amalekite, David might have just been still mad with them.
Right. And so the circumstance a little bit different, but remember now, Saul dead, and so everybody power hungry. The only reason they even kill Ishbosheth is so that they could have some type of reward in David kingdom, right? Mm-hmm. These people ain't thinking rationally because they just betray their king. You know what I mean? To come switch sides, and I know if they see these people ain't thinking, bro. David just curse his nephews, bro. His nephews who do something that was mutually beneficial for David as well as themselves, but it was more beneficial for themselves because David had a covenant with the guy who they killed. But the guy who they killed was an enemy of yours for a while. You know what I'm saying? And David wasn't happy that they killed him. And these was people on David's side. So, excuse me, how you think David would have received you, someone who's sworn loyalty to the king that opposes me? Bro, no, I don't feel like no wise king would be happy and welcoming you, a traitor who do something on my behalf. Like, I can't reward you for your mutiny. I appreciate it. You make my job easier for me, but I can't trust you. You already established yourself as a traitor, you know?
Exactly. I mean, like, yeah, David, like when you read it, David just sounds so like I was having a good day and this news just make me mad.
Mm-hmm. Like, y'all don't see, it's like David, like, bro, y'all don't get it. Eh? Do y'all not know who I am? Do y'all not know me? Y'all keep coming to me with this, with these trickery and this mutiny, and y'all expecting me to be happy. I'm not happy about this.
I mean, and the thing about it too, because remember last chapter, they say like all the people saw David mourn for Abner.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'd be like, David, be thinking about doing this, we could take him or just let David say no. They say, no, we can take this upon our own hand. Let's just go in. We know his schedule. We know we could be sleep. He ain't gonna put up no resistance. Mm-hmm. He already scared of David. We don't need a weak king. David already had amassing his army because we see the last chapter. They say, the army of David was getting bigger and bigger, and mm-hmm. Saul's presence, influence was weakening and weakening. But
yeah, I mean, he's another one who died like a coward. I ain't gonna say coward, but he died a pitiful death, bro. Somebody, one of your servants, bro, kill you in your sleep. It's not honor. There's no honor.
So now we see David said in chapter 12, so David gave an order to his men, and they killed them. They cut off their hands and feet and hung the bodies by the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in Abner's tomb at Hebron. Ouch.
Yep.
They cut off their hand and their feet. Wow.
Mm-hmm. That's what traitors is getting.
That's a traitor punishment.
Yeah. You ain't gonna be a traitor and live, not around David. Save that David is a righteous man, still eye for an eye, you see. They mouth testify against themselves. That's by the law. That's by the Torah. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Well, he make a quick example of them too, like, hey, okay, all of Israel, I don't need no one to help me but God to get this kingdom.
Exactly.
Please stop.
Yeah, please stop. I appreciate the gesture, but I don't need it.
So all the tribes, reading from chapter 5 now, all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, we are your own flesh and blood. In the past, Saul was king over us. You were the one who led Israel on the military campaigns. But the Lord said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will become their ruler. When all the elders of Israel had come to King David at Hebron, that's the first time they actually called him King David.
Mm-hmm.
At Hebron, the king made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord. They anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. And so, I mean, and like that even puts it more in perspective, because think about it. David was in his 20s when all this stuff was happening. Most of this on the run stuff. He might have been a teenager when he killed Goliath. So like, David had a hard life, man, up to this point.
David was on the run for a while, bro. David was on. But time would have to pass because, for sure he spent over a year in the Philistine camp, right? Mm-hmm. He amassed wives at some point. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, time was going. You feel me? But yeah, he probably spent over a decade. He probably spent over a decade on the run. Because let's say hypothetically he killed Goliath when he was like, let's say hypothetically 17, right? He go on in the military campaign after that. He married Michael. I assume that happened within like a year's frame, right? Let's say now he 18 now, right? Say you spend 1 year with your wife, 19. If that was the timeline, then from 19 years old to 30, you was at large. You know what I mean? But that's speculation. But he spent a good amount of time because he was a boy when he killed Goliath, or a young man, as they say. And now he's a 30-year-old.
Yeah, man. Like that's just a lot of time. That's just a lot of time. But I mean, it still shows like at the appointed time, God will make you, like God will deliver on his promise. Yep. At the appointed time. And that's just a lesson of patience too. Because some would argue, was it all worth it? I mean, in our mind, like maybe he didn't have to go through all that. Some of that might have been self-inflicted when he went to Philistine and almost put himself in that jam. But
I still think it's worth it regardless though, bro. To be king, that's like the best job you could have. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what?
To be king, man, I always wanted to be a king. But then I realized. Oh, my. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem, he reigned over all of Israel and Judah for 33 years. So, yeah. So in verse 6, David and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there. The Jebusites said to David, "You will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off." They thought David cannot get in here. Nevertheless,
that's the NIV, right?
This is a. Oh, I in the NIV. I thought it was a New King James. Yeah, that's the NIV.
Yeah, NIVs made me laugh sometimes, bro.
Like, why y'all put that down? Oh my. So, nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion. That is the city of David. Now David said on that day, "Whoever climbs up by way of the water shaft and defeats the Jebusites, the lame and the blind, who are hated by David, who are hated by David's soul." That's some deep-rooted hatred, bro.
Yeah, but there's beef on both sides. It's beef on both sides.
But that's some deep-rooted hatred. Like the Bible had to make sure, like he just don't like them. No, his very soul
hate it. Like it's no room for love, bro. Like no room to not hate in his body. It's full of hate for them. You know what I mean? Like I don't got no more space not to hate you, bro. It's already occupied with hate for y'all, bro. Like
it's like an MTV show. It's the very mention of the Jebusites. It's like when we used to watch Fairly Odd Parents. Every time the Dinklebirds get mentioned,
yeah.
Timmy Daddy, used to get mad. That's David and the Jebusites. The Jebusites.
For sure.
So David said, "Whoever defeats the Jebusites, he shall be chief and a captain. Therefore, they say the blind and the lame shall not come into the house." Then David dwelt in the stronghold and called it the city of David. And David built all around from Millo and inward. Okay. So David went on and became great, and the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him. Then Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David and cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house. So David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. And David took more concubines and wives from Jerusalem. And after he had come from Hebron, Also, more sons and daughters were born to David. I must say, I used to think Solomon had a problem. But after reading the Bible for myself, I realized this problem was an inherited problem.
It was hereditary. It was hereditary.
Because you grow up and you see this.
For sure.
My daddy is king.
Right. And it's only been 2 kings, right? So y'all kind of making the rules. You know what I mean? Like, and David was the first good king. You know, he might have been arguably, and no, he ain't be the last good king. They had a few. Anyway, so you born after David already had wives and stuff like that. So you meet this already established. Like King Solomon, he meet this already the case, you know? But I like how verse 14 right now, they about to summarize more of his sons, but we ain't get into Solomon and his parents yet. You know what I mean? So like we ain't gonna get to that for a while. Like, so yeah, this is definitely a summary.
We can hear about Solomon, but just be like, yeah, Solomon got his own ark way later.
Yeah.
So now these are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem. Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon. I love them because their names just was so modern. They were before their time.
Right.
Nathan and Solomon were before their time. Then you got Ibhar, Elushia, Nepeg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphet. Man, these names. Anyway, so in verse 17, now the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel. All the Philistines went up to search for David, and David heard of it and went down to the stronghold. The Philistines also went and deployed themselves in the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up against these Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand? And the Lord said to David, go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into your hand. So David went to Baal Perazim, and David defeated them there. And he said, the Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breakthrough of water. Therefore he called the name of that place Baal Perazim, which means the Lord breaks through. And they left their images there, and David and his men carried them away. Or they say, in some other translations, say they left their idols there, and David carried the idols away. He's got to just
summarize.
Retranslate.
Yeah.
So in verse 22, then the Philistines went up against the deployed, went out once again, and deployed themselves in the valley of Rephaim. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, and he said, you shall not go up. Circle around behind them and come upon them in front of the mulberry trees. And it shall be, when you hear the sound of the marching troops of the marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, you shall advance quickly, for the Lord will go out before you and strike the camp of the Philistines. And David did so as the Lord commanded him, and he drove back the Philistines from Geba as far as Gezer.
So we can see David is like, I following God. I mean, the Philistines was good to me and all, but I don't got no loyalty to them. I have loyalty to God. You know what I mean? So, like, as a person like me, I would have been like, man, I can't kill the Philistines. You know what I mean? Like, they protected me when my own people, you know, but that would have been a weakness on my part, because I would have been the only one who liked them, and everyone else would hate them, and they would hate all of my people too, you know? And so David fully following God on his conquest. The reason why I mentioned Solomon is because we know who Solomon's mother was, and that's an infamous story, right? But that's not now. That's chapters from now that we even getting into that. So that verse 14, when they mention his sons, that ain't even to say this happening now in terms of timeline of the story. That's just a summary to say what, like, David's children, period, in Jerusalem, you know? And the Bible does that. And I wanted to make a mention of that, because sometimes when we read it, it can be confusing, because you might assume, okay, it's mentioned here, but that doesn't mean this is where it fits in the story. Like, sometimes they summarize without context. Sometimes the Bible just summarizes something.
Man, even on that note, you know what like frustrated me? When like where Chronicles is in the Bible, Because back in the day, Chronicles was the last book, and it was just a big around synopsis of Samuel, kings, prophets, everything.
Right. So in the original Hebrew and Jewish like text, that's how they did it.
Exactly. So, but now you get the Chronicles right after Kings. You're like, wait, well, like I literally just read all this again.
Right. No, and I agree. I question if we should have taken that timeline. You know what I mean? Like,
bro, like, I mean, it's something we got to figure out off mic because we're about to get into a lot of repetitive stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like after Samuel, Kings, Chronicles. I mean, like we already say, like we should have been incorporating Psalms a little bit more, but because Psalms could be a little big one. And then all the prophets that kind of intertwine with some of these stories. I mean, all the prophets and some of the kings, they kind of intertwine too until. And the funny thing is, even some of the kings intertwine with some of Daniel, them a little bit. But you have like the kingdom split up and then they was in Babylonian captivity.
So, folks, listeners, for some context, right?
I know we going on a tangent.
Right. So the Book of Chronicles probably starting right now. Like the stuff we covering now, it's more than likely gonna be in the Book of Chronicles. It's more than likely in the Book of Chronicles. Literally. So we finish in 2 Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and then all of that is being summarized again in the Book of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And obviously more lineages in it because it's Chronicles or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the way people who put the Old Testament together in English, I guess, who put together the King James Version, I'm not sure, but they rearranged the books of the Bible to kind of keep 1st and 2nd Kings with 1st and 2nd Chronicles because it's like following the same narrative, and then they just had poetry and prophets to finish the Old Testament.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I see why they did it, but at the same time,
I still don't know how I feel about it for real. You know what I mean? Because like, who told y'all to do that, and who are you to do that? You know what I'm saying? Like the authors who wrote this, they had all of the previous works in mind, and they had this to be the ending. But now we end with Malachi. I
mean, because the funny thing about it too is like, I mean, back in the day, it was just a bunch of scrolls, kind of way. Yeah. So like Chronicles was just a scroll that they had that
summarized though.
Exactly. It summarized. It logically made sense. Like this could be one of the last ones. So we're like, hey, we don't got to pull out the book of Ezra and then pull out like the book of Kings, and we won't go to like the ending of the scroll because it still kind of blow my mind. And these things was just literally one big scroll. Like, how you searching through?
Real talk. Real talk.
But I don't know. Do we want to do a next chapter?
I feel like this is a story of its own, though, the arc.
Yeah, I feel like it is. Yeah. I feel like this episode's short, but at the same time, it's always good to have a short episode.
Yeah, it ain't the worst thing. We overdue for a short episode. I hope y'all ain't upset about that, but sometimes I be feeling bad for y'all because like sometimes we just let it go. Like last episode was pretty long though. Was pretty long though. Yeah. So I guess we could have cut that up a little better, but
yeah.
All right, so let's go into like thoughts on this episode, right? So obviously David is okay, back to the man after God's own heart narrative. I'm starting to be won over, because it just used to bother me when people keep saying David was a man after God's own heart, right? But it's like they mentioned that so early in David's life, bro. They mentioned that before David fight Goliath, they mentioned that because that was Samuel talking to that was I think 1 Samuel chapter 15 when Samuel was talking to Saul after Saul failed the test with the Amalekites. And in my mind, I'm like, bro, all right, he was a man after God's own heart for sure back then when he was young. But we see a lot of stuff that he do. Obviously, it's an infamous thing that he does, which I feel like people, they kind of hold over his head too much, in my opinion. But I'm just like, is that man after God's own heart title, is that for his entire life? Because we can see where people change. You know what I'm saying? And so when David was about to kill Nabal and everybody, you know what I'm saying? When David had killed the Amalekite, like right now I can see where that was David being righteous, for the sin that Amalekite had quote unquote maybe committed. But like to me, it's certain things I see David doing, I'm just like, I don't know, but this dude look like a regular dude, just like me, a hothead. He ready to kill somebody, or if he don't get his way, and it's easy to speculate on someone else's life, but I'm just like, bro, this man after God's own heart thing, Is this one of them texts that we taking out of context, bro? Was his whole life like that, or was he like that during this span of time, which is possible? You could have been a man after God's own heart before the fame. And then through all of the fame, all of the running for 10 years, you losing faith, stuff could change you. But right now, we can see time and time again where David is zealous for God's righteousness. Even David's enemies ain't just like me and you have a beef. David's enemies are people who hate God and want to blaspheme God, like Goliath, for instance. David was like, bro, okay, it's one thing if you're scared, bro, but this person is disrespecting our God. You know, that was his perspective. Like, it wasn't his pride. Like, his pride wasn't on the way. He's like, bro, for the sake of God and for the sanctity of God, this guy is my enemy and I will destroy you. You know, I will destroy that guy, Goliath. And so I actually can see where consistently throughout the story, David has been zealous for the law or for God. You know, when you have somebody who is your family member, I know people who their family members can do no wrong in there, but if my family steals from you, quote unquote, this is the scenario. If someone's like, let's say me hypothetically, if my family steals from you and you want to fight my family member, no, I fighting you for wanting to fight my family member, not even considering my family member is in the wrong. My family member is the aggressor in this situation. You know, some people, they don't think about the role that their family member or their loved one plays in drama. All they say is, my right or wrong, I stick him beside them. But that ain't David. David like, no, I stick him beside God and God's law. Even if my nephews ain't living right, I wish the part. I'll let God handle them. You know what I'm saying? I ain't endorsing that. You feel me? If an enemy of my enemy do something illegal, I'm not endorsing that either. You feel me? If my friends kill my enemy in an illegal way, I'm not supporting that. You know, that's how David is. And then David also made me laugh too, because David was like, if y'all go and kill, who was the Jezreelites? I can't remember.
Jebusites.
Jebusites. He said, bro, if y'all kill them, I'll make you chief in the war, you know, in the army. Like it's like a sweepstakes right now, you know, like it's like a competition, you know, like winner gets this role. You feel
exactly,
me?
this rank.
Right. And everything is to the honor to God. You know what I mean? Everything he consulting God for everything. This ain't David's will be done. You know, this God and God's interest that he's seeking out. So I know, bro. It kind of winning me over that this guy, you know, it might be biblically accurate to say him as a person was a man after God's own heart throughout his whole life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of things. Like one, yeah, you could see like David right now is zealous for God. And I think one of the things about it is David, even when he messed up, he always came back to God. And we're going to get more into that aspect even more as we progress through David's story, because boy, it gets a whole lot better and a whole lot more like the pinnacle of the movie still coming. But like what I like about this right now is like we can see David's still a sinner, man. That's just the best way to put it right now. Like he's still a sinner. Like he hard up for God. He have a great relationship with God, but he's still a sinner. But we still see God using him even in his sinful ways. Because I mean, and you're saying what I talk about, like me and see David do no overt sins, but we can see this. We see this man mentioned with all his concubines. We know God for a fact don't like that. Like God, go for it.
No, yeah, no, I do think that's something we should mention. You know what I mean? Because sometimes in the Bible, like when Saul saw the witch, the Bible don't come and say he visited a witch and that was right or wrong. You know, but the Bible literally said, I think it's Deuteronomy 18, a king is not to have many wives. But you could continue your point. I'm about to go find the text right now.
Yeah, so it's like we seeing again. So when he became king of Hebron, they listed off a bunch of women he was with and a bunch of children he had with these women. And again, we seeing they didn't list off the women this time, but we definitely know all of these children were not with the same women. And they also said he had more wives and more concubines. And so we see David creating this, I don't want to say harem, but y'all kind of get what I'm saying. He had a whole court of females in his royal palace. Mm-hmm. God didn't like that aspect of it. But nonetheless, even though he was still sinning, he was still zealous and honest for God. And I don't know. It's a weird point to make because is the sinning right? Definitely not. Definitely not. It's not right and it's not justified. But my thing is, we don't have to be perfect for God to use us, and we all have our imperfections. And again, like we have this podcast, but I mean, like me and Kazi still growing our relationship with God. We are not perfect by any means of the imagination. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that God can't use us to perform this ministry. You find the verse?
Yeah, Deuteronomy 17, verse 17. And they talking about the king, just for context. You can read from verse 14, they start talking about the king. But anyway, neither shall he multiply wise for himself. I'm reading from the New King James Version. Lest his heart turn away, nor shall he greatly multiply silver and gold for himself. So basically, to summarize, they was talking about what the king should do. They were saying the king should write down a copy of the law and read it every day. You know what I'm saying? And the king should live humble. The king should be a humble king. You know, he shouldn't be someone who accumulating wives or silver and gold. You know what I'm saying? Because these things change the heart of kings. You know,
go for it.
No, like I said, that's important to mention.
And the funny thing about it, we know like this same thing that even though it's not really being addressed now, story alert, it's one of the things that really cost David his kingdom. Well, and one of the things he really wanted to do, he couldn't do because of this character flaw he had. So it's like, I guess my point is really and truly like God can still use you in your while you yourself are working on whatever you're working through, whether it be an addiction, whether it be women. You see that was Samson's downfall too. Whether it be finances, whether it be struggling with all manner of sins, because it's too numerous to mention. And we all sin in our different ways. Just because someone sins different than you doesn't mean you don't sin. So, I mean, like God can use anybody, but it doesn't mean that the sins are justified. The sins are not justified, but he still uses us because we are imperfect beings. And he has to use us to get his ministry done. And so, I mean, the next point for David, is just, it's like we're really seeing the shift in him, though. Because now it's like that zealous and vigor that we saw in young David that we kind of lost in the time of trouble is coming back now that he's king. We're seeing that like, hey, yeah, I'm going to fight for God. I'm going to be commander of the Israelite armies again. I'm going to consult God about my movements. God, do I need to go out against the Philistines? Because remember, flashback when when the children of Israel had just gotten to Canaan, they were trying to go against some of the tribes. They had just defeated Jericho, and they was going against Ai, and they thought things were sweet. They didn't even talk to God and consult God about how to do it, and they got wrecked.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? They got wrecked. But we see David, who just finished destroying the Philistines. They came again, and he said, "Yo, God, should I go again?" And God said, "No, don't go this time. Do something different." But imagine if David just was like, "My God on my side, no matter what, let me go." The battle might not have turned out the same way. So I just like we seeing, we always making fun saying, man, like, these people don't learn. These people don't learn. These people don't learn. It's kind of nice to see a character who look like they learn a little something. Because I will give them too much credit to have to retract it about 10 episodes from now.
That's true.
But we seeing some of the things we're saying, but if y'all had just read, y'all would have known what they've been through, and you would have known not to do this or just to ask God. But we're seeing David asking God about his every move. And I think that's very commendable. And I think that's like how we should be in our own lives. It's something I know, again, is a work in progress, something I'm working on, because it's so easy to say, man, God already did this for me before, he's going to do it for me again, or God ain't concerned about the small things in my life. And it, again, is something I know a couple of weeks ago, honestly, might have been over 10 episodes ago now at this point, where I'm saying like things that I know I can control, it's hard for me to turn those over to God, but I'm working on it. And I think that's it's still a battle. I mean, in full transparency, it's still a battle, like, because it's easy to do, but it's hard to do because you want that control. And think about it, David is an army captain. He knows how to fight, and he was amongst the Philistines for a year. He knows how they operate too. And again, you just finished beating them, so it's easy to say, man, I got this. I don't really need God to win this battle. But I feel like in everything we go through and every decision we make, as minuscule as it is, we just need to know that God does care, and he does have a plan, and he does know what's best for us. And if we trust him, we'll see, just like David, we trust him and he'll win the battle for us. We might not have to do any work at all. So.
It's been about 7 years since David was appointed king over Judah, and now he is officially king over all of Israel. And to make matters better, he did things the Lord's way. In the next chapter, we learn about another victory for David, something that made him so happy that he took the time to dance. But we'll talk more about that on the next episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. Tonight's episode included voice acting by your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz. Remember to go ahead and research on your own in order to get a more firm understanding of tonight's episode. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. You can follow us on social media at A Breath of Fresh Air Pod on Instagram and BOFAPOD on Twitter. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.